next speaker, and excuse me if I don't say the name quite right, is Amr Saleh. And Amr is a student of religious studies with interest in interfaith dialogue, and he delivers the Friday sermons at the Auckland City Hospital and works as a data engineer for 2 degrees. Thank you. Over to you.
Hello everyone. I'm really impressed, thank you Emily, for this very insightful and deep... Oh, it's not on?
Sorry, and that's for the camera, that's for the
Oh,
No, we've got 2.
I do it?
These are both ours. Yeah, have you got it on?
Yeah.
Is
Hello?
it green? No?
Why don't you just give me yours?
Yeah, it should work now.
That's not good. Hello everyone. I'm really impressed and honored to be here today with talking with you, although it's very difficult after what Emily has done, the amount of research and the chronological order of explaining the biblical side and the research side. That was really impressive. Allow me to be very simple, very casual. Although at the same time I'll just say what the Islamic narrative and the Islamic teachings around the environment along the line. But first of all, it's really personal that I want to share with you a story. I'm happy to be here today in a synagogue for the first time in my life. And I remember the time, my very few first weeks in New Zealand. And I wanted to pray the Friday prayer. And I went to Ponsonby Masjid, the mosque in Ponsonby in the city. And I couldn't find a place to park my car, so I asked a friend, and he said, just park over there, in the church over there. I was like, sorry? You guys park in this church? Is it something you do here? I'm new to the country, just tell me. And he said, yeah. Just go park over there. That's what we do. On Fridays, we park in the church. On Sunday, they park in the mosque. Easy. And yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that makes sense. But I have traveled quite a bit. I've seen other countries. But the level of tolerance that we have in New Zealand really is different. I made a lot of friends in the past few years I've been in New Zealand. A lot of times I see groups from the church coming to visit me in the prayer. And I get invited a lot to speak with Jewish groups and Christian groups. That's really impressive. And if you're born here, or you've lived here so long that you don't think this is really good, no, it is. So take a moment and just appreciate it. New Zealand is beautiful. And then the shocking events happened, 15th of March. I remember the ache it felt, just sleeping at night, and the ache of losing someone. It's really horrible. Almost everyone in this country has lost, the Muslim communities have lost a loved one, family member, a friend. But the immense love what we've seen from the community on the very next day, that was also exceptional. I remember the visual. I went to Nautia Square, and I saw thousands of people. For the first time, I don't see this number of people in New Zealand. Thousands of people gathering on the very next day. I remember the speech from the rabbi. I remember the speech from the Christian community. I remember the visits the very next week to our mosque. Usually in my mosque, there's like 100 people, 200 max showing up. And that day, about 700 people, I couldn't cross to the spot where I give the speech from the amount of people, all just gathering to say, we are together. We are one. It's very special to see this happening in New Zealand. We're really far ahead of the world when it comes to tolerance. I just had to make this introduction. And I also have to mention that now, when I look back and think about the terrorist who did this attack, he wasn't religious. He wasn't following any religion. He mentioned in his, whatever he wrote, he said that he was not doing this for a religious reason. And what happens is, it's the same. It's the case with all terrorists. They don't follow the religion. Because it doesn't take you so long when you read and study a religion to find that peace and love is at the root of every single religion on this earth. But it's us that we can sometimes twist it to our favor, to our agenda, to implement corruption. And hatred and enmity, they happen when we don't know the other. Hatred happens when a person dehumanizes the other, when he thinks as if he's not fully human being, he's not equals. But the way to change this is to come and meet and listen to each other and talk and get to understand the perspective from here, from there, know how we think, know how we are deep down just the same. Just the same. In the Quran, God said, O people, O mankind, we have created you from a man and a woman, and then we have made you into nations and tribes in order to know one another. In order to know one another. If you think about it, all of us in this room, we share the same parents. Adam and Eve are our parents. We're literally family. And we're different nations and tribes in order to know one another. So I'm really grateful for the Pearl of Islands and for Yasser for putting this together, for getting us to know one another, to listen to the biblical narrative of how we should preserve Earth and the Islamic one and then the Jewish one. And in this matter, the first principle that highlights the relationship between the human being and Earth and the environment and nature is the trusteeship. In Arabic we call it Khalifa, which basically means guardian. God has made a human being the guardian of this planet. It's a trust. God has entrusted us to look after this earth. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, the world is beautiful. It is verdant, and verily God, the Exalted, has made you his steward in it. And he sees how you acquit yourself. If a believer plants a tree and then an animal comes passing by, eats from it, or a person or whoever, or a bird, he gets rewarded. It's as if he has done a charity because he has planted a tree and it's in favor of creatures in this world. And again, the essence boils down to harmony, to living in this world, knowing that you are entrusted of this world to prosper it. God dislikes corruption, all kinds of it, including environmental corruption, industrial pollution, environmental damage, all sorts of not fully caring of our environment. And do good as Allah has been good to you. In the Quran, Allah says, and do good as Allah has done good for you. And do not seek to cause corruption in this earth. Allah does not love those who corrupt. Islam talks about pollution and environment and corruption way before it was green and cool. In our mosques, we try to take steady steps to set an example for our community, for our people, to take one step further. We don't need the government to tell us don't use plastic, so we stop it. We just tend to take one step further. Let's try to do something good for the environment, even if the whole world is not. And I will tell you why near the end. But let me tell you a story, because the environment is not just the green nature and trees. It's also all there is, the ecosystem of animals and birds. And when it comes to dealing with different creatures, there are a set of rules. We can't kill an animal just like that, just haphazardly. You can't kill even an ant haphazardly. This is not allowed in Islam. You can't kill an ant. And there's a beautiful story with ants in the Quran. The Prophet Solomon the Prophet Solomon was with his army, and they crossed by a valley of ants. And the Prophet Solomon, he knew the words of the animals and ants, so he could understand. And one of the ants talked to its people, saying, get in the valley, get in, stay away, so Solomon may crush you. And Solomon smiled, and he thanked God. He thanked God for the favor that he can understand ants, and that he can cross with his valley almost the entire earth without crushing the ants. One story happened with the Prophet Muhammad when they were traveling, and he found a pigeon looking for its sons. And the Prophet became angry, and he said, who took the sons of this pigeon? Turn it back to them. It's not simple. You just don't go around mess with animals because they don't have, no, they have feelings. They are nations like you. You can slaughter animals for the sake of eating, but not for the sake of fun. You can't use animals as targets to play or to shoot or to practice. You can do it for the sake of eating, but nothing else. And even if you do it for the sake of eating, you pay its respect. The Prophet says, if you are to slaughter an animal, then do it right. Do it wisely. Sharpen your knife and make it easy for the animal. One day the Prophet found someone who was slaughtering an animal, and he was sharpening the knife in front of the animal, and the animal was gazing at the knife. Prophet says, can't you do that earlier? Do you want to kill the animal twice? And when it comes to eating, we don't just eat as full as we can. The Prophet says the worst container you can ever fill is your stomach. So we shouldn't be filling our stomachs. It's 3/3. Third for the food, third for the drinks, water, and third for air, empty. We don't get full. We're not supposed to be full. And imagine if we all apply this. If we don't waste the tons of food that we waste every single day, how would this world look like? How would the poverty look like? Eat and drink, but don't waste by excess. For Allah does not love the wasters. This is the Holy Quran. The Quran also says, children of Adam, dress well when you are at worship, and eat and drink, but do not be extravagant. God does not like extravagant people. Even if you are rich, even if resources are there, we are commanded to use resources wisely. The Prophet says, do not waste water. Even if you were on the bank of a flowing river. To you, it's a river. I can just waste it. No. Don't waste water. In cleaning, in drink, don't waste water. But oftentimes, actually more often than not, people don't pay attention to all of that. This is just the theory. We come to the mosque, we listen to this, but in real life we eat as full as we can, and we do all the bad things. But there are repercussions. The Quran says, corruption has spread on land and sea as a result of what people's hands have done, so that Allah may cause them to taste the consequences of some of their deeds, and perhaps they might return. We start to see the global warming, we start to see all the impact of our craziness. We just, for financial reasons, we don't care about the environment, but hey, it's coming back. And there's a story I want to sort of finish with. You may have heard this story before. It's a jungle that was on fire. And all the animals were just screaming and running and crazy, our home is being burned, what should we do, where should we go, and just screaming and running everywhere. And there was this little hummingbird that would fly all the way to the river, pick up some teeny tiny droplets of water in its mouth, and fly back to the forest and drops it. and flies again to the river, picks up some teeny tiny droplets of water and go back all the way to the fire and drops it. Animals were like, dude, what are you doing? Hummingbird, you're so small. You do nothing. And the bird would look at them and say, hey, I'm doing what I can. Basically, this is what we need to do. Regardless of the amount of corruption in this world, if you can only do what you can, that will be enough. Do it consistently until the final breath. The Prophet says, when the hour happens, and the hour means the final moment in this world, like this world is ending, it's collapsing. When the hour comes, and in the hand of one of you is this little seed, he is planting a new tree. It takes years to be something, and the world is finishing. This will never be a tree. It doesn't have time. The Prophet says, if you can plant it, then go plant it. My brothers, all we need to do is to do what we can, to be like the hummingbird, to do an action, to be good to people, to animals, to plants, to the environment, just to do the bit that we can. Thank you.